I could lose everything and I can still have God and I will be okay.
Yeah. Wow.
Because if I didn't learn that, I would have lost my mind. It's really painful to have some of the people that you love the most not be in your life for a season and not knowing whether God is going to restore it, heal it. And so in that season, I definitely realized all I need is Jesus. That's it.
Turn on the lamp, I don't go postal till God give his stamp. We going global, I'm in with the champs. I sit at the Oval, they told me I can't, Turn on the lamp, I don't go postal till God give his stamp. We going global, I'm in with the champs. I sit at the Oval, they told me I can't,
Welcome to Season 2, Episode 5 of Turn on the Lamp podcast. I'm your host, Devin Lamp, and this guest I have today, I'm super honored to have her. She's a woman who's very soft-spoken, but when she does speak up, you learn so much wisdom from her. It's Kamaria Evans. I want to introduce you.
Thank you. I'm so happy and excited to be here.
What is this season that God currently has you in, and how have you been able to navigate that?
I would say I'm in a season of trusting him with really everything, with finances, with my relationships, with the things that I stumble or struggle with every day, and really just trusting him to provide for all of my needs, trusting him to be there for me whenever I have those moments, and I feel like everything's falling apart, or I feel like I don't really have anybody. And so that's really the season that I believe that I'm in right now.
So when we talk about like trusting God, right, to someone who may be unfamiliar to what it means to walk with God, they may have like some questions like as far as trusting him. Does that mean, you know, you down on your knees crying every time? Or does that mean it's more so like making that decision to align everything to him being your backbone?
I think every day is different. Some days I am on my knees crying out to God. Other days I feel like, you know, me and God can just talk. I can have a conversation like I'm talking to my friend, and I feel still trying to be joyful in those moments. And then some days it's like you do everything in the same day. Like in the morning I might be on my knees and I'm crying, and then when the day ends, I'm just going to sleep with peace. And my heart is full, and I feel like, okay, like I got through the day. I just got through the day. Yeah. So I think it's definitely a roller coaster ride. And then I feel like depending on where you are in your walk with God, like you just kind of have to go with the ebbs and flows. 'Cause it's just, I think every day might look different. And that's where it's like you really just have to trust that when it's all said and done, though, everything works out for your good.
Right, right. So let's get to know a little Kamaria.
Okay.
Let's start it back from the childhood. You were born in Long Island, New York, right?
Yes, sir.
So growing up in the household, you being the middle child of 3, who was your biggest role model growing up?
My mom, because she, I viewed her as, still view her as Superwoman. She just did a lot of things. She was a college professor. She was a mentor to many young women. She started nonprofits. And so, of course, I didn't understand that when I was young. But when I looked at her, I was just like, wow, like you do so much. And yet you still have to find the time to take care of me, my brother, my sister, you know, just making sure like she was really the glue to our family.
Right.
So just being able to see her do all those things, it was amazing. And it's not that I didn't want to be like a college professor or start the nonprofits, but just the fact that she could do all those things and still be able to just keep our family together was really just inspiring to me. And when I get like the age that I'm at now, I want to be able to still do all these different things for myself and still keep my family together as well.
Right. You mentioned how your mother, she played these different roles outside of the household, but I'm sure she can attest to her most important role being inside the household.
Yeah.
So what different things that she instilled in you do you still take to this day?
We it's not that we went to church every Sunday, but I do have memories of going to church, especially when we were younger, like being in the church. I feel like out of everything, that was really what she tried to instill in all of us. And aside from that, being a good person and making sure you're kind to people, making sure that you're generous, selfless, and just trying to instill good characteristics in us. But definitely the main thing, just making sure that we keep God first. She says that time and time again. And out of all my siblings, though, I always knew that I had a different kind of relationship with God. And they have their relationships with God too, but it was just a different connection. And my mom would say the same thing, that out of all of us, she felt like there was just something different.
The age of 2, you said you had this certain gravitation towards gospel music. So talk about what you remember about that, as far as you listening to gospel music and that connection.
Well, my mom shared this story with me that we were in the car and she was playing this Fred Hammond song, All Things Work Together. And there's this one specific part in the song, and every single time I heard it, I just started crying. Wow. And it wasn't that she said she didn't think I was sad, but that it moved me. And I mean, I love gospel music. And I have memories of my dad playing Fred Hammond. I love Fred Hammond. Really just feeling a connection to God when I would listen to gospel music. And I still am like that to this day. So
as a toddler, you mentioned how extroverted you were. You were always putting on shows in front of your family, right?
Yeah.
But then when you made the move to Texas, you became more reserved and like in your shell, right?
Yes.
So I know as a culture today, many kids, they struggle with just comprehending their emotions and kind of pinpointing of like, okay, this is anxiety, but where is this coming from, right? So talk about the things that you struggle with internally as a kid.
I think we moved around a lot even before we moved to Texas. I think I went to quite a few elementary schools. So when we moved to Texas, it was just, I really am not sure what, maybe it was just me just being in a new environment. It was different. I felt like I didn't look like all the other kids. I felt like I didn't act like all the other kids. I had dreadlocks at the time, so I just felt set apart. And it was really hard for me to fit in. And I think that from the time that we moved here all the way through high school, I always felt like that. Like, I'm not really sure where I fit in. I did track, and that was cool, but just never really feeling like this feeling of I belong. Like, so I think that I just struggled with being on my own path and my own journey and really just figuring out who I am, but definitely struggled with anxiety, struggled with negative thoughts, struggled with insecurities, and it was definitely a battle, and something that once I became an adult, really just having to figure out, like, okay, how do I overcome these things? And turning to God, and it's like, I really need help in these areas, and realizing that I can't overcome them by myself.
Right. You know, as you became an adult, you started to uproot these things, right? Seeing where these things were planted as a kid. And I have a quote for you to go along with that. It says, true healing begins by loving the wounded child within you.
That's deep. That's deep. And I agree, because especially within the past 2 years, I've been listening to a lot of this guy called Tim Ross, and how he speaks about healing your inner child and showing your inner child love and grace, because you don't really realize a lot of who you are as an adult is stemmed from who you were as a kid. The traumas that you went through, just some of the cycles that you fell into, and then it's just hard to break when you become an adult. So it's just really, even though it's hard and sometimes it's painful, just really going back and digging back into your past and, okay, like really analyzing how certain things made you feel or how they molded you, and coming to a realization like, wow, this really did hurt me, or this really did leave a mark on me.
Right.
And how can I heal from this? Because if you don't, it's going to stick with you. It doesn't matter how old you could be, 60 years old and still dealing with trauma from when you were 12. So really, it's really important to tackle that and to make sure that you tend to your inner child from when, you were hurt when stuff happened when you were 5, 6, your traumas.
You've always had this root of faith when you were younger, but just like any kid, we all have our own dreams and aspirations, right?
Yeah.
So you come from a family lineage of your mom was a college professor, your dad was a teacher, and even your grandparents was a teacher, right?
Yeah.
So did you want to step into that role, or were there particularly like unique areas on where you was like, nah, I want to do this as Kamaria?
I think that my passion for kids was definitely something that God blessed me with. And I saw my mom, my grandparents, even my dad was a teacher. So I kind of think that just seeing them work with kids kind of inspired me as well. But my passion is for little kids. Something about with being around toddlers and babies that I just have such fulfillment in it. But aside from that, I am the only one in my family who's creative. It's the truth. I'm not just saying. Well, and my dad. I think I got some of my creativity from my dad.
Yeah.
He can rap. He can write. He's very talented in that sense. And I myself, I can draw, sing, write. I just have some creative talents that I feel like if I really put into use, I think God could take me to so many different places. And so within the next couple of years, I really want to see where God takes me using those gifts, because I feel like that's definitely what I was put here on this earth for. Right now, I'm a full-time nanny, and I love it. I love it. There's nothing else that I would rather be doing right now. But then, like, when I think about after that and how to use my gifts to glorify God, like that's what I want to be focused on next. So, but from the time I was little, I always knew that I could use my creativity for sure.
I want to ask you, when we're talking about this walk with faith and you transition to now being an adult, was there a particular moment that you felt yourself drifting away from God?
Yes. Right after there's probably 2 points. I was a junior in high school and my grandmother passed away. And I don't think I realized the effect that it had on me until later, like a couple years later. But it really did do something internally to where I feel like I just was kind of going my own way and walking my own path and not making some good decisions. But I didn't even realize it. So I just kept going. When I graduated high school and got to college, I started making even worse decisions because you graduate. I didn't even go off to school. I stayed in McKinney. I went to Collin College, Community College, but still, I just wasn't hanging around the right people. Got into a really toxic situation with a guy, and I feel like that was probably like my faith wear. I don't even, I never want to say that I just didn't have a relationship with God. I knew God was always there with me the whole time, but I just was intentionally ignoring him and just not praying. I don't think I was going to church, wasn't journaling, nothing. Like, I knew he was there, but I just chose to, I'm just like,
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure. Facts. So you talk about that season where you was going through that relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then navigating through that breakup, and then also you were losing friends as well. They were just dropping off like
Well,
flies, right?
yeah.
So what was the biggest lesson that you learned during that season?
All I need is God.
Mm.
That's it. That's it. Like, I could lose everything and I can still have God and I will be okay.
Yeah. Wow.
Because if I didn't learn that, I would have lost my mind. It's really painful to have some of the people that you love the most not be in your life for a season and not knowing whether God is going to restore it, heal it. And so in that season, I definitely realized like all I need is Jesus. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
I like that point because when we're talking about relationships and people in our generation, we think like when we get together in a relationship with somebody, like, oh, it's just going to be sunshine and rainbows, right? But not realizing that, kind of going to your point, you have to realize that every healthy relationship stems from your personal relationship with God. You know what I mean? And the Bible, it describes Jesus as the chief cornerstone.
Right.
So I looked up cornerstone. And it's defined as an important quality or feature on which a particular thing depends on or is based.
Mm-hmm.
So lots of relationships, I feel like they kind of fall through, whether that's friendship or intimate one, they fall through because there's not a solid foundation.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like if you think of a storm and, you know, houses that have foundations, well, the storm may take away the roof and all that, but the foundation is still set.
Right.
And then we also think like, we like the story of Adam and Eve, right? Eve was created out of Adam to be his helper. But it's like we have to realize God first placed Adam in a garden. And it was just him and God, that vertical relationship. And Adam had a purpose, right? And then, you know, from Adam, Eve was formed, but Adam was a whole person first, right? So society, it likes to tell you like, okay, 1 + 1 = 2. We all know that. But it's like, and ideally, like, you know, marriage being the goal with our relationships, it's like 1 + 1 actually = 1. You have to have two wholes coming together, and then you're formed together as one flesh. Right. So let's transition. So when I asked you what's the most valuable thing in your life, you said it's time, right? Mm-hmm. So realizing the importance of time, what have you realized about that now that you're older?
We're only here for a limited amount of time. Life is a vapor. Like we are here and that's it. Mm-hmm. And I think just really realizing that there's something eternal on the other side of this. And so this is, even if you're here for 100 years, that's nothing compared to where you're going to spend eternity. Yeah. Exactly. So, and also just using my time wisely and making sure that I'm spending time with the people that I love and doing the things that I love and not doing things that don't bring me value or set me back or hold me back. Making sure that I'm spending the necessary time that I need with God so he can direct me in my life. So I think that's what I've realized in my adulthood, because before I feel like I would just waste time, just waste time. Yeah. And then once you get older, it's like, what are you doing?
Right. Something that a lot of people that's approaching their 30s or even people approaching their 40s, they start looking off in the future and wondering like, okay, what is my life going to be 5 or 10 years from now, right? And you talked about like just being present in a moment. So what would you tell your younger self about just being present and being where your feet are?
Just to quiet your thoughts. I think oftentimes, especially when I was a kid, I'm like thinking about the future. Like what are things going to be like a year from now? Or thinking about even the next day instead of being present and soaking up everything that's happening in the moment and not thinking about when I got in trouble a year, like 6 months ago or last week, or what am I going to do 6 months from now, or just think or worrying about the future, what's going to happen with this situation or that situation, or thinking in my past about something I could have done differently. I had a really bad habit of doing that. And so just really quieting the thoughts, being like, nuh-uh, We're right here in this moment. We're just going to soak it up, be present, because then you can't enjoy it. You can't be there for other people if you're so consumed with your own thoughts and thinking about the past, the future, just being where your feet are and taking the moment for what it is, good or bad. So
I like to draw to this whenever I start to look off in the future. So Matthew 6:34, Jesus states, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds in the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life?" Okay, so this is one of my favorite stories in the Bible that I can kind of correlate this with. The whole David and Goliath story, right? David's called the king, but people think that was just like a snap of a finger, like boom, and now he's king. But we have to realize, like, David was tending to sheep in a field before he was called to be king. You know what I mean? It was his everyday life that he was just, being faithful with what God placed in front of him, and then God elevated him. And I think when we talk about, like, what blessings we want to, come our way in the future, we have to realize that the prerequisite of a lot of our blessing is faithful stewardship with what we have. You know what I mean? And like you said, just like coming out of yourself, like zoom out, bro. Like see what's around you, see who you can affect around you. And I think that's key. I like that you said that. So let's talk about this life-changing event you had in 2019. And, you hear about people who got in car accidents. They talk about the physical recovery, but more so the mental recovery, right? So walk us through the events of what you remember step by step that day and how that sparked your faith.
I had just left work. I was working at Kids Are Kids at the time. My mom met me. I can't remember why she met me at my job, but I was leaving. I was getting off. I had a hair appointment. It's crazy. I actually haven't really thought about it this deep in a while. I had a hair appointment, and so she was following me. I think she was going home, but I was heading towards Dallas, and we were coming up on this light. It was yellow, and I just still kept going. My mom stopped at the red light. She didn't make it. And as I'm driving, there's this other vehicle, and they had a yield sign a yield sign. And they decided to cut across traffic and T-bone me. And they hit my side, the driver's side, and the glass shattered. Everything happened so fast.
Wow.
I just remember, I knew it was going to happen. I felt like I tried to brace myself because I saw them coming, and I'm like, okay, y'all are not going to stop. It just, as soon as they hit me, I just swerved over to the side and put my car in park, but the glass had shattered. And I just remember seeing blood just start to get everywhere, all over my shirt, my arm, my eye. I knew something happened with my eye because it started to feel really weird. I didn't know if I had glass in it. It just, it was a lot. And I started to panic, and I just wanted to get out of the car because I was like, I don't know how badly it is. I wanted to see if I could get out. I couldn't get out on my driver's side, so I climbed over to the passenger side and got out. And I just laid in the grass like, what just happened?
Wow.
This really just happened. I was shocked. And it looked terrible, I'm sure, but people were riding past and they were like, do you need me to call 911? My face was just, it was bad. My mom made it through the light, and I just remember her running up to me because she clearly saw it was my car. And she was just there with me. And then the ambulance was called, and they got the stretcher out because, you just don't know what kind of damage was done potentially. And I just remember laying on the stretcher like, God, am I going to be okay? Am I going to be all right? And I just remember saying a prayer. I think I was just too stunned to process the fact that this was all happening. I knew I was in pain, but I think there was a lot of adrenaline. And I just remember praying I just have to trust you that I'm going to be all right regardless. And just asking God just to really be with me, to comfort me, to give me peace. And then the whole way over to the ambulance, I don't even really remember. I think I was just praying the whole way over. I was just praying. And then once we got to the hospital, I was just like still in shock. But when I went to go look at myself in the mirror, that's when I kind of fell apart because it just looked so bad. My eye was swollen. I had to get like 12 or 13 stitches in my face. It just looked really, really bad. My dad came. My friend, she actually was she went to go run errands. She happened to see there was an accident, and she was like, I think that's Kamaria's car.
Wow.
So she just so happened to see it, and so she was calling me. I didn't answer. She called my mom. My mom was like, yeah, she was in an accident. She came to the hospital, and I just remember everyone just being there, and it felt good to have them there, but I was just so... It was a lot. I was just like, am I going to need cosmetic surgery? Is my face going to heal? And, looks aren't everything, but in that moment, I just was really thinking like, I mean, this is my face. And, people, oh, you'll be fine. It's okay. But when it's your face.
Right.
Like,
it's different.
You can't tell me I hear you. Yes, I know that God can work miracles and he can heal me. But like in that moment, I was just so devastated that like my face could permanently not look the way it was before.
Yeah.
And so that whole process was very heavy. I felt like I was in a dark place. And I just remember praying every day, like, God, I trust you to heal me. I trust you to not allow my insecurities to get the best of me. Because felt like I was just honing too much into it. And I also, even though I had my family, I was still going through a season where I was going through the breakup and I didn't have all my friends from before, so I still kind of felt alone. So, but I just remember every day just praying to God, asking for strength, asking for healing, and then literally it happened in June. By November, I made this collage. Every month I would take pictures of my face, and by the time we got to November, it was like you couldn't even tell. And I just remember posting it on Thanksgiving saying how thankful I was that God really just was walking with me through every step of the way, and that he really healed me in ways that I was just like, wow. Because originally they said that it was possible that I'd have a scar. And so I was just like really upset about it. But as you can see, like, you can't even notice that anything happened.
Sure.
So, but yeah, that was a huge turning point in my life. I made some really huge life changes after that happened. Just going to church more. I got baptized shortly after that happened. And just taking my walk with God more seriously, because I was just like, look at what you did for me. Like the way you restored me and you healed me, and just it really transformed my walk with God.
Yeah. Man, thank you for sharing that.
Of
sure. So to someone who may be new to their faith, what's your encouragement that you would give them that kind of helped you when you first started taking God more serious, like you said?
Give yourself grace. I feel like when I first really started to take my walk with God seriously, I was so hard on myself. And I didn't need to be, because I just had this mindset where it's like, if I'm not perfect, which I know no one is, but still just if I'm not perfect or I'm not close to perfect, then how can God use me? How can he still love someone who just messes up so much? And so, like when a kid gets in trouble and you put them in timeout, or, you take something away from them, I feel like the way I was navigating my relationship with God at that time was, if I messed up and I did something that I knew was wrong, I would go put myself in the timeout corner.
Wow.
I would punish myself. Like, no, God, like, how can you still love me when I'm just not doing right, or I'm really struggling in these areas? And it's just like, but he's forgiven me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I also had to just tell myself that it's okay but when you mess up. And you really just have to allow God to transform your heart. And when you do that, then, you're not going to mess up as much. You're not going to fall into the same things as much. But that doesn't mean it'll never happen. But just really giving yourself grace to, you're going to mess up.
Yeah. Like you said, like everything flows from your heart, right? The Bible said from your heart, everything flows. So it's like, if you don't first like deal with those things that are internal, like you said, you were putting yourself in timeout. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And that sounds crazy to say, but it's real. It's something that a lot of followers they end up doing because they think like, okay, while our strive is to become as holy as possible, it's just like there's a reason Jesus died on the cross. You know what I mean? Because God realized like, okay, all of my children, they won't be able to be saved alone. You know what I mean? So he sent his son. So in your times of adversity, what's your favorite Bible verse that you always fall on? And why has that been so beneficial to you?
My favorite is 2 Corinthians 12:9-10. But it's basically Paul is talking about a thorn on his side, and he asked God to take it away 3 times, and God said, "My grace is sufficient." And I love that Bible verse just because it's grace. I just love God's grace and the grace that we should give others and give ourselves, the grace that God gives us. And then I have a tattoo that says, "For when I am weak, then I am strong," because nothing that I do in my own strength. God gives me the strength to do the things that I do. And so I think it's important to talk about your weaknesses. That's what Paul to boast about my weaknesses, because God gives us strength to be better, to overcome anything. And so I really am in tune with that Bible verse the most, just because I think it's certainly kind of been like, I just feel like throughout my whole life, that's probably the one Bible verse that I can just always fall back on.
I like where you said like Paul asking God to remove that thorn, right? But there's a lot of scars and a lot of thorns that we walk around with that like God is like, no, I want you to use that.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think like, all right, just speaking for me, like when I first got saved, I would walk around like, man, like there's certain things that I just want to keep in the dark that I went through previously, right? But that's that very thing that it's like, oh man, I just wish I can get rid of it. I believe that's like God's reminder to you, like that's why you need me that much. You know what I mean? That's why your reliance should be upon me. So when you're talking about like your walk with God and how you realize like in my flesh I can't do it alone, how much more by you realizing that verse has your walk with God meant to you?
Just knowing that no matter what, having God show up for me in different forms, like a friend, a father, and just realizing that like I need God no matter what, and there's a peace that comes with it and a joy that comes with it, and realizing that no matter the battle or the hardships that I face, that God is just always going to be with me, and I can face anything and everything and just know that he's fighting for me, he's for me, he's not against me, he's on my team, and that he loves me. And I think that that's important, like to remind yourself that there's nothing that you can do to separate God's love from you. And so I would say that's how, like, kind of where I think my faith has grown to now as an adult, and going through those hardships
you talked about your relationship with God being built up, and now it's like stronger than ever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So on a daily basis, we may get caught up in, careers,
Mm-hmm.
spending time with our loved ones,
Mm-hmm.
that it's difficult to manage and find time to spend with God. So how do you personally, spend time with God on a daily basis?
Well, first you have to be disciplined, just because life be lifing.
For
Um,
real.
and so being intentional about spending time with God every day, I have to do it. And if there's ever, which is not too many, a day that I don't do it, I'm so hard on myself.
Mm.
So hard on myself. But just as if I can't get it in the morning, then I try to do it if I'm at work. Because I nanny the little baby that I watch. She takes naps, so I'll try and do my Bible verse or read a book or read the Bible. I'll like bring it with me to work. If I can't do it at work, I'll do it in the evening time, or make sure I have some prayer time. Journal. I'm big on journaling. I love to journal. I'll write letters to God, and just finding a time, whether it's morning, the afternoon, or in the evening, just to be intentional about spending time with God, even if it's just for 10 minutes. Like, I can't give God 10 minutes of my day.
Right. Yeah.
10 minutes.
Yeah, for real.
So it's just, I feel like I don't have any excuse, not even just to do that, or listening to worship music on my way to work, listening to a faith-based podcast. Just making sure I'm intentional about it and being disciplined about it, because it's so easy to just be like, oh, I got so busy today, or I just have a lot going on in life. Well, that's when you got to cling to God the most, and not just be in your own self and worry about your thoughts and feelings. Like, no, like that's when you need to cling to God.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's kind of how I navigated through now. Before, it was always a struggle. I feel like there was couple days out the week where I'm just like, oh, sorry God, I didn't get to you today, and it's like, no. As I've gotten older, I was like, there's no room for that. There's no.
You've realized, like you said, at a young age, that God placed that love for kids on your heart. So as you've gotten older and matured, how has the process of finding your purpose and what God placed you on here, how has that been? Is that a struggle for you, or is that something that you're just learning to navigate through?
Yeah, I think it's something I'm just navigating through, because before, I think that I struggled with feeling like it wasn't good enough. And it's just like, how could I say that, though, if this is something that God gave me, a gift that God gave me? Because a lot of people out of their own mouths say, I couldn't do what you do. And I was just like, But just the patience that I have, and how good it feels to just know that you can instill certain things in little kids about God and about just faith and all the things. And so it makes me feel like, oh wow, like maybe this is making a difference, or maybe this is gonna do something for them that's gonna stick with them until adulthood.
Right.
And so, but it's still something that I struggle with, because even though this is what I'm currently doing, I don't think that it's something that I'm going to do forever. And so still figuring out, well, what's next, or how else is God going to use me and my gifts and my talents that he's blessed me with.
Yeah.
And so that's when it's like really having to trust God. And it's like, okay, wherever you're taking me, wherever you're leading me, I trust you. And just know that it's all going to work out, especially if, God is at the center of it. Then I'm wherever he's taking me, I'm down for it. I'm ready.
Sure. This is, speaking of the camera, this is the encouragement to younger people, especially in my generation. I've seen it a lot of times, and I go through it as well. It's like you're going to have seasons that you just may seem like no motion happening, right? Everything just slow, you know what I mean? But I believe that God purposely, he'll sit you down if he feel like you moving too fast, you know what I mean? And we have to realize, when it's talking about purpose and what God, placed us on this earth to do, at the end of the day, he wants us to be more like Christ. You know what I mean? So we may view like purpose like a particular career or a particular thing that we're doing, a role, But it's like at the end of the day, you got to allow God to transform you internally, right? And we may think like, God, I'm ready for this platform. You know what I mean? I'm ready to do this. But it's like God sees around the corner. You know, God's like, okay, I have this for you. I have this promise, but I want to cultivate something in you as well. So I like what you said about that. So wrapping up the show, Kamaria, I appreciate you for sure. And I want to give my flowers moment to you. Okay. Just talking about like that you've been through, it's inspiring within itself, but just seeing the light that you shine, whether that's nannying, I want to encourage you and tell you, like, don't take that lightly, because like as an educator, I know like we need people in this world that's gonna pour the right stuff into these kids. You know what I mean? And just the light that you shine, like I said, but then also the people that you're able to impact. And it's like I said at the beginning of the show, you're a quiet girl, but like when you speak up, it's like, man, there's so much bottled into one. You know what I mean? So I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate having you on this show.
Thank you.
Sharing your life story. And I can't wait to see what's next for you.
Thank you. And thank you for allowing me to share the things that I've been through. And I think that what you're doing is great. I think you're going to touch a lot of people. And I think that this is going to grow bigger than what you can even imagine.
I don't go postal till God give his stamp. We going global, I'm in with the champs. I said the oval, they told me I can't. I'm feeling like Oprah, cause you get a chance and you get a chance. Tell us.